The cousin claimed she saved the two young masters. Too bad I still had their jade pendants. I swallowed the last sliver of spiced beef, and the greaseproof paper in my hand crackled as I crumpled it. Before me, the vermilion gates of the Zhenguo Marquisate stood shut, their heavy plaque engraved with the estate's name. "Second miss, thank heavens you finished that meat," whispered Old Madam Zhang, my sister's trusted nurse, dabbing at her sweaty brow as she clutched my sleeve. "Once we enter the side courtyard and meet the young lady and the old matriarch's maids, whatever you do not mention the events at Nanju, or those two jade pendants you've sewn into your waistband." I felt the cool, smooth contours of the two dragon-carved white jade pendants, tucked into the lining of my trousers, pressing against my hip. 3 months ago, in the misty mountains of Nanju, I had been the most celebrated constable in the local yamen. While pursuing bandits deep in the mountains, I had found 2 richly dressed youths collapsed under a tree, bitten by venomous snakes. I had used my inner strength to expel the poison and carried them out of the wilderness. In their feverish days, they had pressed their keepsakes into my hand, mumbling that they were the 4th and 5th young masters of the capital's Marquisate, and that they would surely reward me one day. Later, weary of the brutality of the official world, I had faked my own death during a river pirate raid, washed away the scent of blood, and traveled 1,000 li to the capital to seek shelter with my pregnant elder sister. I had intended to stop by the Marquisate on the way, show the pendants, and collect a few hundred taels to buy a small shop and live a quiet life. But no sooner had I entered the capital than I heard a most peculiar tale. My distant cousin, Jiang, had arrived at the Marquisate's gates half a month ago, weeping and clutching a so-called life-saving token, claiming she had rescued the 4th and 5th young masters in the misty mountains. The Marquisate, overflowing with gratitude, had not only taken her in as an honored guest but was now arranging an excellent marriage for her. "Quite the opportunist, my cousin," I remarked with a raised eyebrow, following Old Madam Zhang through the side gate. The side hall was thick with the cloying scent of incense. My sister was seated on a soft couch, her belly swollen with child, holding Jiang's hand and murmuring softly. Jiang was dressed in a lotus root-colored silk gown, her hair adorned with pearl hairpins, and she clutched an embroidered handkerchief, her eyes rimmed red. "You're back?" My sister waved me over eagerly, her eyes full of barely concealed worry. "Come, sit. You've been traveling so long. You've gotten so tan. And your clothes smell like soy sauce." I plopped down onto a rosewood chair, helping myself to a piece of osmanthus cake from the table. "Sister, that spiced beef from Zhang's shop outside is excellent, firm texture, perfectly braised. You shouldn't eat heavy food in your condition, but once the baby's born, I'll take you there myself." "You and your food." My sister sighed in exasperation, jabbing my forehead with her finger. "You're not getting any younger, and you've given up your career. What's to become of you? Your brother-in-law and I thought we might find you a steady, honest merchant in the capital to marry." Jiang, dabbing delicately at her eyes, chimed in with a sweet, syrupy voice laced with condescension. "Cousin, matters of marriage are not to be taken lightly. The capital isn't like those backwater towns in Nanju. The rules here are far stricter. If Ayu has grown too wild and unruly, the great houses will hardly look twice at her. But don't you worry, the old matriarch and the young masters of the Marquisate are all so grateful to me. In a few days, I'll find a chance to put in a good word with the 4th young master. Perhaps I can even secure a respectable match for her." I chewed my cake, studying Jiang's delicate face. In Nanju, she wouldn't even dare to kill a chicken, and the mere sight of a snake would make her faint. How dare she claim my deed? The 2 jade pendants, the real ones, were still sewn into my trousers. What token had she used? "Cousin," I said abruptly, brushing the crumbs from my hands, "the snakes in the misty mountains are black-headed vipers. Within half an hour of the bite, the wound blackens and begins to rot. The 4th young master was bitten on his left leg, and the 5th on his right hand. Tell me, how did you suck the venom out with your own mouth? Your lips look far too delicate to have survived the poison." Jiang's expression flickered. She twisted her handkerchief nervously, then quickly masked her unease, lowering her head and covering her face with a simper. At such a critical moment, how could I worry about myself? I merely drew on sheer determination. When the two young masters awoke, they gave me their tokens. If you don't believe me, ask any servant in the Marquisate, everyone in the capital knows I saved them. I hid a smile. In the dense fog of the misty mountains, the fourth and fifth young masters, their minds clouded by the venom, could hardly keep their eyes open. They only knew their rescuer was a woman. Jiang Jiro must have found some discarded accessory or shred of clothing near the foot of the mountain and concocted this entire scheme. Just then, a commotion arose from the direction of the courtyard. A maid from the second branch, dressed in a red padded jacket, strode in with an air of arrogance, holding a vermilion invitation. Miss Jiang, the old matriarch requests your presence in the main hall. The fourth and fifth young masters were practicing in the training grounds today, and their old injuries have been bothering them. They're asking to see their savior. The maid's eyes swept dismissively over me before she added, with a false smile aimed at my sister, Lady Lin, the old matriarch has said that since your relations are seeking refuge in the capital, the Marquisate won't let you go hungry. But there are important guests in the main hall today, people of high standing. As for your rustic relatives, best keep them in the side courtyard with some tea and snacks. It wouldn't do to lose face for the Marquisate. My sister's face flushed red with embarrassment. She lowered her head and murmured, "Thank you for the reminder. We understand." Jiang Jiro rose, smoothing her skirts. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and triumph. You rest here in the side courtyard. Once I've spoken with the matriarch, I'll have some of the capital's finest pastries sent over for you. I watched her retreating figure and reached back to touch the two pendants. Each was engraved with a tiny character, Su for 4th Young Master Pei Yun's, and Zhou for 5th Young Master Pei Yun Zhou. I didn't care about a false reputation. But if anyone tried to use me as a stepping stone, or to trample on my sister, they had another thing coming. Besides, the two young masters' poison had never been fully eradicated. Black-headed viper venom is tenacious. I had only suppressed it with my inner energy and common herbs. Without the specific antidote from Nanju, a surge of qi and blood in their martial practice after 3 months would cause a fatal relapse. What could Jiang Jiro do to save them? Cry on them? I stood, cracking my knuckles. Sister, I said, slinging an arm around her shoulder, grinning, this capital is quite interesting. Good food, good drama. Let's go see the show. My sister started. They said we're not to go to the main hall. So what? I winked. We're going for the feast, not for a fight. The main courtyard was draped with red silk, and the carved tables were laden with cold and hot dishes. Gold and silver chopsticks glinted in the sun. I settled into a seat at a corner table, and my chopsticks never stopped moving. The crispy duck was perfect, golden skin, crispy and oily, the juices bursting in my mouth. The braised pork belly was meltingly tender. I attacked the spare ribs, the lion's head meatballs, my cheeks bulging with food. Jiang Jiro was seated at the head table beside the old matriarch, far away, her gaze deliberately averted, tinged with disdain. Second Miss Pei Zhenjin, strolled over with a teacup, eyeing me from head to toe. She covered her mouth with a laugh. Oh my, first sister-in-law's rustic cousin certainly has a fine appetite. That's the 4th plate of duck, isn't it? While the Marquisate's kitchen can hardly complain about feeding a guest, the way you eat, one might think you haven't seen meat in a year. Outsiders might think we're starving our relations. A few of the young ladies at the table tittered behind their sleeves. I swallowed, wiped my hands on a napkin, and looked up at her. Second Miss, you misunderstand. In Nanju, those of us who practice martial arts burn through a lot of energy. 3 bowls of rice is perfectly normal. And this duck is truly well prepared. It would be a waste of the farmer's hard work not to savor every last piece. The old matriarch, seated on the dais, turned at the commotion. Dressed in a deep red robe embroidered with show characters, longevity, she had keen, sharp eyes that settled on my wrist. You speak with a great deal of confidence, child. You claim to be a martial artist? This junior has trained in martial arts since childhood and has a bit of brute strength, matriarch, I replied, standing. My gaze swept across the courtyard and landed on a massive, ancient locust tree, so thick 2 people could barely encircle its trunk. High in its branches, at least 3 zhang up, hung a red silk flower, tied there for the flower viewing banquet. Before anyone could react, I strode to the base of the tree. Squatting, I wrapped my arms around the half-man-high, exquisitely carved stone lion ornament that weighed over 200 jin. With a deep breath and a surge of strength, I hoisted the massive stone beast above my head. I sprang, pushing off the tree trunk, and in a single, fluid motion, snatched the red flower from its lofty perch and landed lightly back on the ground. The stone lion crashed down with a thunderous boom that shook the dust from the ground. The garden fell into absolute silence. Second Miss had turned pale and staggered backward. The old matriarch stared for a moment, then burst into uproarious laughter, clapping her hands together. Excellent! A fine display of martial prowess. Far more spirited than those delicate, sickly misses of the capital. Someone, a reward. She awarded me a pair of heavy gold bracelets on the spot. Midway through the feast, a breathless servant ran in. Matriarch! Terrible news! The 4th and 5th young masters have gotten into a fight at the North Training Grounds. Even the instructors can't stop them. The matriarch frowned and turned to me. You're skilled in martial arts. Come with me to the North Grounds. I want you to knock some sense into those unruly brats. Dust swirled across the training grounds. 4th young master Pei Yunce, clad in a fighting tunic, clutched a heavy bow and kicked a fallen guard. Useless lot! Can't even last 3 moves against me, and you call yourselves instructors? Jiang Jiro stood nearby, clutching a sachet, her voice dripping with false sweetness. 4th young master, pray don't be so angry. You'll hurt yourself. Pei Yun saw the matriarch approach with me and sneered. Grandmother, where did you dig up this country bumpkin? One of that poor relation from our sister-in-law's side? Here to beg for scraps and meddle in our affairs? Ignoring his barbs, I strode to the weapon rack and picked up an arrow, 100-pound bow. With a mouth that foul, you must be using a lot of mouthwash. Too bad it's not working. In one motion, I drew the bow to its full crescent, the arrow aimed at the sky. Thwip! The arrow shot forth like a black streak of lightning, tearing past Pei Yun's ear and shattering the gold coronet on his head. His hair tumbled loose around his shoulders. He stood frozen, pale as death. I moved in a blur, appearing beside him and seizing his riding crop. With a twist and a flick of my wrist, I sent a wave of force through him that buckled his knees and sent him sprawling into the dirt. You! He gasped, his face contorting. Then, to everyone's horror, his whole body seized. A gout of dark, almost black blood erupted from his mouth. The poison has flared up. Jiang Jiro shrieked, rummaging in her sleeve and pulling out a medicine bottle. Don't worry, young master. I have the antidote pills I prepared when I saved you last time. The second branch matriarch and her faction began shouting, this country girl has assaulted the 4th young master. She's made him cough up blood. Matriarch, she's a menace. Jiang Jiro forced a pill into the young man's mouth, affecting an air of compassionate healing, and shot me a triumphant glance. I folded my arms, watching coldly. A simple detoxifying pill will do nothing for black-headed viper venom that's already seeped into his blood and chi. In fact, the drug interaction will only accelerate the toxin's assault on his heart. Jiang Jiro's face drained of color. You're talking nonsense. I was the one who saved him. In the ensuing chaos, the heavy, rhythmic tread of booted feet sounded from the edge of the training grounds. A grim-faced captain of the Marquisate's guard, clad in black armor and wearing a black iron longsword, strode in at the head of a column of black-clad soldiers. Orders from the Marquis. The captain raised the dark iron token of the Zhenguo Marquis. His voice was cold as ice. Fourth young master, for setting up an illegal training ground, speaking out of turn, and showing disrespect to a guest, you are to kneel in the ancestral hall for 3 days and 3 nights. No food or water is to be brought by anyone without the Marquis's express seal. Jiang Zhiro stammered, but... The fourth young master just coughed up blood. The Marquis said, the captain cut her off icily, if he dies, he dies. If he lives, he keeps kneeling. As for Miss Lin, he turned to me and performed a fist and palm salute. Matriarch, the Marquis sends word that Miss Lin is to attend him in the main hall tomorrow afternoon to give an account of the day's events at the training ground. I pressed my hand to the pendants sewn into my waistband, frowning. Why was this cold, formidable Marquis suddenly involving himself in a minor domestic affair on my behalf? And the summons. Did he suspect something? That night, I unpicked the stitches of my waistband and slapped the 2 cool white jade pendants onto the oiled wood table. The candle flame sputtered, lighting the dragon patterns and the tiny engravings. My sister's eyes nearly popped out of her head. She reached out a trembling hand to touch the characters Su and Zhou. You. How did you come by these tokens? Your cousin Jiang Zhiro said. She found some torn scraps of their clothing, I said, taking a long gulp of tea. These are the real tokens. 3 months ago, in the Misty Mountains, it was I who carried them out of that snake pit. I was in disguise as a constable then, and they were too addled by the poison to see my face clearly. My brother-in-law jumped up, hurriedly shutting the doors and windows. He dabbed at his cold sweat and whispered urgently, you mustn't speak of this so carelessly. The Marquisate is a house of immense prestige. Jiang Zhiro is basking in the favor of the matriarch in the second branch. If you try to expose her now, with no proof, and the matriarch thinks you're just jealous, it will mean ruin for all of us. We must go slowly. I waved a dismissive hand. Brother-in-law, relax. I never intended to claim credit. I came here for a quiet life, and I'm fine with that. But if she uses that false credit to harm this family, I won't stand idle. Later, after my sister and brother-in-law had retired for the night, my stomach growled, hollow from the cold sweet soup at the banquet. The capital had a strict curfew on main roads, but near the river docks, just a short way from the Marquisate's back lane, a clandestine night market always flourished. I changed into a clean blue traveling tunic, tied my hair up in a tight bun, and slipped out through the window. My constable's instincts were sharp. I avoided the 2 patrols in the Marquisate's rear courtyard with ease and vaulted over the Tuzhan wall, landing softly in the dark alley beyond. The wonton stall was belching steam. I found a corner table. Boss. A big bowl of 3 delicacy wontons, heavy on the scallions and chili oil. The steaming bowl had just arrived when I heard soft footsteps behind me. That scent. The sanbai plant from Nanju. I'd never forget it in 100 years. A young man in a moon-white brocade robe sat down opposite me. Fifth young master Peiyinzhou's eyes were red, locked on my face, his voice thick with barely contained emotion. It is you. Miss IU. You were the one who carried me and my brother those 10 li through the misty mountains. You were chewing on sanbai grass to neutralize the poison, and it still clings to you. I didn't even look up, focusing on my wonton. You're mistaken, young master. I'm just a night market drifter. Don't lie. Peiyinzhou's voice was raw. The scrap of cloth Jiang Zhiro presented isn't the right one. The real pendants are with you. I've been looking for you for 3 whole months. I don't care if you were a constable, or where you come from. I've already spoken to my brother, and I'm going to ask our eldest to let me take you as my rightful wife. I nearly choked on a wonton, splattering it onto his face. Young master, have you taken leave of your senses? We met exactly once, and I put mud in your mouth to stop the bleeding. And you want to marry me? I'm not joking. His gaze was steadfast. You saved my life. You're brave and upright. I know what I want, and it's you. I rolled my eyes, thoroughly exasperated with this lovesick youth. I tossed a few coins on the table and said, "Dream on," before taking off at a run. Using my lightness kung fu, I evaded the night watchman and slipped back over the Marquisate wall. As I prepared to climb back to my quarters via the wisteria trellis by the south study, I noticed the candlelight still burning faintly within. The carved window was ajar, and I caught snippets of conversation. I muffled my presence completely, pressing myself into the shadows beneath the window ledge. Elder brother. Please, I beg of you. Pei Yunzhou's voice, full of desperation, came from within. I saw Miss Ayu tonight. She was the one who saved me and fourth brother. I'm asking to be allowed to marry her. Grant me your permission. Fourth young master Pei Yunz chimed in, his voice petulant. Brother, I want to marry her too. The way she shot that arrow today was incredible. She beat me fair and square. Why should fifth get her? Smack! The heavy crack of a gavel on the desk shook the whole room. A voice like breaking ice, deep and laced with indisputable authority, spoke, insolent whelps. You'd come to me, your elder brother, with this nonsense? It was the Zhenguo Marquis, Pei Jingxian. Fourth, you've misbehaved in the training grounds and proven yourself unstable. You will leave at dawn for the looming academy in the suburbs for 6 months of quiet contemplation. Fifth, you have yet to earn a single military merit and your mind is in a frivolous place. You're to pack your belongings and leave for the southern camp for 2 years training. Brother! Pei Yunzhou's voice was thick with tears. Get out! The sounds of the 2 young masters being led away by the black-armored guards faded. The room fell into a silence like a tomb. I was about to slip away when I heard a heavy, suppressed cough from inside. Then, the tap-tap of the matriarch's cane. Jingxian, the old lady sighed, her voice full of concern, you've banished both your brothers. Is this truly for the house's discipline, or is it for yourself? A long silence. When Pei Jingxian spoke again, his voice was hoarse, stripped of all its cold armor, and raw with feeling. The scent. Yunzhou was right. Only she could bear that sandby grass from Nanju. Mother. That man, poisoned in near death in the heart of the misty mountains, whose clothes were stripped and whose wounds were treated by her, it wasn't Yunz or Yunzhou. It was me. My body went rigid against the wall. My mind was a blank, a deafening roar. What? The nameless, high-ranking official I had found in that foggy forest, the one I'd stripped, slathered with ointment, held, and pressed into an icy stream, was the Zhenguo Marquis, the most powerful minister in the realm? I thought she perished in that pirate fire in Nanju. For 3 months I've been tormented, utterly lost. Now, she's here, alive, right under my own roof, and I will never, ever let her go. Tomorrow, mother, I shall make her a formal proposal myself. I pressed my back against the wall, my spine drenched in cold sweat. A wave of panic washed over me. I had stripped a man I didn't know, seen his bare chest, and basically manhandled him all night long. The old matriarch sat on her redwood armchair, slamming a small medicine bottle onto the tea table. Jiang Zhiro knelt trembling on the floor, her face whiter than a sheet of paper. This bottle was found in your vanity's secret compartment, with the powder residue tested by the imperial physician, the matriarch said, her voice like ice. I suspected something was amiss when the fourth boy coughed up blood. That antidote you gave him was laced with slow-acting chi-dispersing powder. You never cured him. You only feigned improvement by forcing him to rely on your drugs to suppress his martial energy. Jiang Zhiro was weeping, her forehead slamming against the floor as she kowtowed. Mercy, matriarch. I only wanted a place here. Please, for my cousin's sake, spare me. I was sitting in a side chair, munching on peanuts. I dusted off my hands and stood. The matriarch turned to me. This vile woman stole your credit and even dared to poison our own. What would you have done with her? I'll see it done. Matriarch, killing is too easy, and taking her to court would only bring shame upon the Marquisate, I said, walking up to Jiang Zhiro and looking down at her. But for the past 2 weeks, you've drawn 50 taels from the Marquisate's account, not to mention all the gold and jewelry the matriarch gave you. I want every single coin and piece back. Jiang Zhiro lifted her head, tears streaming. Lin Yu. This is revenge. We are cousins. Now that you're basking in favor, you'd crush me? I only wanted a good home. Is that a crime? You've always been good with martial arts and so popular, while what am I supposed to do but cling to the powerful to survive? Her self-pitying rant made me laugh. Drop the act. You want a good home? Fine. That's your business. But earning your place and being a fraud who poisons people are two entirely different things. You didn't have the skill, the bravery, or the integrity to be honest, so you decided to steal someone else's credit. And when that failed, you tried to poison them. By your logic, anyone who feels unhappy can just go out and rob and kill, right? You're not unlucky. You're simply wicked and lazy. I stunned her into silence. She sat there, face red, crying and speechless. The matriarch gave a slight nod and called in sturdy serving women. Take this shameless creature away. Confiscate all she's been given, and she's to be sent to the farm in the outer suburbs at dawn for hard labor. With Jiang Zhiro taken care of, and a purse full of banknotes and gold ingots, I was in high spirits. Leaving the Marquisate, I strolled down Zhuke Avenue in the midday sun. A sweet, tempting aroma led me to Shue's sweet shop at the western end of the street. Boss. 2 bowls of crushed ice red bean soup with sweet rice balls. I called out, jingling my coins. The shop assistant came beaming over, then looked embarrassed. I'm so sorry, miss, but the last 2 bowls were just bought out by the big house over there. We've not even got a scrap of ice left. I followed his gaze to a remarkably opulent carriage of golden Nanhwa wood, drawn by 4 pitch-black stallions. It had been forced to a stop by a peddler crossing the street. My craving gnawed at me. The carriage's owner surely wouldn't mind sparing 1 bowl. I could pay triple. I strode toward it. The black-armored guards, on alert, moved to intercept, but a low cough from inside the carriage stopped them. They parted and let me pass. Without a second thought, thinking only that the master had given a silent command, I went up to the carriage and lifted the embroidered silk curtain. Would you be willing to do a deal, sir? I've been craving that sweet rice soup. Could I buy 1 bowl from you? I'll pay double. The curtain drew back fully. A tall, impeccably dressed figure was inside. He wore a dark blue robe with gold python embroidery, his dark hair bound with a white jade coronet. His features were as sharp as a chiseled blade, his lips pressed in a firm line, exuding an air of unassailable power. My pupils contracted. A deafening roar filled my ears. This face was him. The man I had stripped, bathed, and held all night in the misty mountains. The man who had, just last night, declared his feelings for me and his intent to propose, the Zhenguo Marquis himself, Pei Jingxian. He was seated in the carriage, holding a bowl of the ice-sweetened soup in his hand. His dark, starry eyes locked onto me, and a smile played at the corner of his lips. "Miss Lin," he said, his voice a deep, magnetic rumble that sent a shiver down my spine, "you've stopped my carriage in the middle of the road, just for a bowl of sweet soup?" Guilt flooded me. I had not only stripped him but had stolen his first kiss in the process. And now I knew of his heartfelt intentions. This was my chance to escape to my carefree life, and I was not about to let it be derailed. "Wrong person. So sorry. Goodbye." I bolted. Channeling my inner strength into my legs, I seemed to vanish into thin air, becoming a blur that shot halfway down the street. From the carriage, Pei Jingxian watched my panicked flight. He didn't give the order to pursue. He just looked down at his sweet rice soup, a triumphant smile curling on his lips. "Fast," he murmured to himself. Then, to his guards, "Pass my command, the betrothal gifts will be sent to the Lin family's side courtyard tomorrow morning." The lacquered tray bore 6 bowls of iced plum and sweet rice soup, plump, white dumplings floating in a rich, sweet and sour plum broth, a wisp of cool mist curling around them. As soon as I stepped into the main hall's side corridor, my eyes were locked onto those bowls. After I'd moved with my sister into the highest grade listening to bamboo pavilion in the inner quarters, the matriarch had decreed that I was to be treated as a noble guest. Once I married the Marquis, I was to officially become the mistress of the Marquisate and occupy the moon-gazing residence. Pei Jingxian sat behind a rosewood desk, sipping tea with an air of elegant composure. An old nanny stood guard outside the corridor. The hall contained only the two of us. "Sit," he said, his eyes dark and steady on my face. The plum soup was just made in the small kitchen. "You ran away so quickly yesterday. Today, I've made sure there's plenty." I took the seat, not standing on ceremony, and lifted the bowl to my lips. The icy, sour sweetness burst on my tongue, and the glutinous rice balls were wonderfully chewy. I finished the bowl, wiped my mouth, and looked at the man before me. He was almost unnaturally handsome. "Marquis, let's not mince words," I said. "You've invited me, had these betrothal gifts sent, and put on this grand play. What is this all about?" Pei Jingxian leaned forward, tapping the table. 3 months ago in the Misty Mountains, I lay dying of poison. You saved my life, but you also stripped me down to my underclothes and threw me into an icy stream for half a night. In my delirium, I believe you also stole a kiss or two, Miss Lin. As a high official of the realm, my honor was compromised. How do you plan to settle the score?" I nearly choked. In my defense, he had been burning with fever, and I'd only given him a few quick pecks to get him to swallow the medicine. I hadn't thought he'd remember it, or that he'd be so direct. I leaned back, studying his flawless profile. In terms of looks, he was incomparable. In terms of power, he was the esteemed Zhenguo Marquis. In terms of character, he'd gone so far as to send his own brothers away rather than compete for my hand. "You want me to take responsibility?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. A faint smile touched his lips. "The betrothal gifts are at the front hall. What do you say?" "Deal." I slapped the table, laughing. "I won't be losing out either. You're handsome, rich, powerful, and you have a nice set of lips. It's a good bargain for me. I accept." He seemed genuinely taken aback by my unfiltered, forthright answer. For a moment, he was silent. Then, his eyes, dark and starry, filled with a deep warmth and amusement that made my stomach flutter. Just then, a commotion came from the front yard. Jiang Zhiro, once so arrogant, was being led away by 2 sturdy serving women, her hair a mess, bawling as she was being put into a cart to be sent back to her hometown. Meanwhile, as the betrothal gifts were brought in, the various branches of the Marquisate hastened to offer their congratulations to the matriarch. Second branch Madame Li, who had been so haughty before, was now at the matriarch's side, all smiles and sycophancy. She pressed a box of rare Southern Sea pearls into my hand, simpering, "Miss Ayu, we of the second branch have been blind. This is a small gift for your trousseau. We are all family now. Please say a few good words about my Jinjin to the Marquis." And second Miss Pei Jinjin, her earlier pride utterly gone, bowed her head and said in a soft voice, "Sister Ayu, I was terribly foolish before. Please, forgive me." I saw the truth in their changed faces clearly. In a high household, strength and status were the only things that mattered. I took the pearls without pretense and gave them a gracious smile, giving them away to save face. Back in the listening to bamboo pavilion, my sister, heavy with child, took my hands, her eyes red. "Ayu, the Marquis's house is so powerful, and Pei Jingxian is a pillar of the court. You're so impulsive and free-spirited. What if you're wronged here? I can't bear the thought." I sat her down on the couch, pressed a pastry into her hands, and smiled. "Sister, think about it. I can lift a stone lion with one hand. There's no one in this house who could physically overpower me. If Pei Jingxian treats me badly, I can just punch him and run off. And he's been truly sincere. I like how he looks. Life is what you make of it. Why borrow trouble?" My sister laughed, the worry finally lifting from her face. That evening, the matriarch herself consulted the almanac and set the wedding date for the 6th of the next month. I leaned against the window of my pavilion, watching the sunset, a smile on my lips. I thought I'd just be getting a meal and a place to sleep, but I'd managed to bag myself a handsome, wealthy marquis. The red candles crackled and popped, their light bathing the wedding chamber in a warm glow. I was now officially his wife. I had assumed that my new husband, the cold and formidable Marquis, would remain distant and aloof. But reality was far different. He clung to me day and night, and had become the most jealous man I'd ever known. The morning after the wedding, 4th and 5th young masters had been given a short leave from the academy and the army camp to pay their respects and present tea. "Sister-in-law, I was a fool before. Please accept this tea," 4th young master Pei Yun said, bowing his head respectfully. 5th young master Pei Yunzhou, meanwhile, grinned and tugged at my sleeve. "Sister, how about showing me a few of those Nanju constable moves later? I've never seen a style quite like yours." I laughed and was about to accept the tea when Pei Jingxian set down his cup with a sharp click. "Where are your manners?" he said, his voice icy. "4th, those 10 essays your tutor assigned last month, how many have you written? 5th, how many of your cavalry archery assessments have you passed? If you can't achieve an excellent rating, you will kneel in the ancestral hall and copy the family rules 3 times and forego supper." The 2 young men, cowed, fled the hall in a panic. Second Miss Pei leaned in and whispered, "My brother gets jealous of his own siblings. A few days ago, when big sister-in-law was just talking to you about life in Nanju, he turned around and gave big brother a 3-month assignment to inspect the salt trade in Jiangsu and Zhejiang. He sent him far away." I shook my head, sweating. This chilly marquis was certainly possessive. That afternoon, as Pei Jingxian was away on business, second Miss Pei's eyes lit up. She pulled me aside, "Sister, the best theater in town has a troupe of dancers from the western regions, and the lead dancer is an absolute marvel. Let's rent a private box and go watch." I, a natural thrill-seeker, was immediately intrigued. We dressed in men's clothes, donned bamboo hats, and snuck through the back alley to the theater's most luxurious box. The performance was spectacular. The lead dancer, a young man in red, moved like a dragon, his movements fluid and graceful. I was so absorbed, eating peanuts and cheering, that I didn't notice the warmth rising in my body, a result of all the tonics the matriarch had been feeding me. Suddenly, a trickle of blood ran from my nose. "Ah! Sister! You're bleeding!" Pei Jinjin shrieked. Before I could even cover my nose, the door to the box was thrown open with a bang. A wave of cold air swept in. Pei Jingxian stood silhouetted in the doorway, his black and gold robe swirling. The air in the room dropped to freezing point. Pei Jingxian fled, abandoning me without a second thought. He strode over, wiped the blood from my face with his own handkerchief, and shot a murderous glare at the terrified dancers on stage. Enjoying yourself, Lin Yu? Is my martial prowess and form so insufficient that you must seek entertainment elsewhere? I shrank back, a dry laugh escaping my throat. Darling, it was a misunderstanding. It's those tonics your grandmother's been feeding me. They've made my blood run hot. Hot blood? He laughed coldly. In one swift motion, he swept me into his arms and carried me down the stairs. That night, in the warm embrace of the moon-gazing pavilion, the scent of roses and moonlight mingling in the air, my cold, formidable husband had shed his official robes. In a silk gown, his chest bare and luminous, he sat with a zither in his lap, his long, elegant fingers coaxing a melody of passion from the strings. He looked up at me, his eyes as dark and deep as the night sky, his voice husky and warm. Come here. I swallowed, my eyes wide. He was, without a doubt, far more pleasing to the eye than any dancer. I climbed obediently onto the couch and nestled into his arms. I'm sorry. I won't look at anyone else again. His lips curved in a triumphant smirk. Too late for apologies. Unless I make sure you can't walk tomorrow, you'll only wander off again. The silken bed curtains fell, the moonlight filtering through the carved window, casting a rosy glow over our intertwined forms. Meanwhile, in the ancestral hall, 4th and 5th young masters were on their knees, rubbing sword joints and groaning over their copied pages of the family rules. There were no such weary sighs in the moon-gazing pavilion, only the soft sounds of laughter and love. From that first fateful meeting in the misty mountains to the joyful misunderstandings of the capital, the threads of our story had woven themselves into a perfect tapestry. I, a simple, brash constable, had finally found my home and my happiness in the bustling capital, and the one thing I'd never expected to find, a love that was as deep and true as it was fiercely possessive. The story is now complete. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and support me.